Holistic connection. Let's heal. Holistic connection. Let's learn. Holistic connection. Let's grow. Holistic connection. Let's be real.
Hello, everyone. I am Pamela Topchin, your host for Holistic Connections, Conversations with Holistic Practitioners. And I want to welcome my guest, James, today and ask you to just give a little bit of information about yourself and about what you do in the holistic healing space, please.
Yep. So my name is James. I am a movement coach specializing in the brain and nervous system. I usually like to tell people my job is thinking about movement at its smallest possible level. In my experience, anyway, most people are really easily able to figure out the big problems. Whether it's sport or injury, if there's something
Sure.
majorly wrong, it stands out and you can see what's wrong and you can figure that out. The stuff that people miss are all these tiny little things along the bottom. So when I say movement, the kind of things that I'm describing might not sound like movement. I'm talking about analyzing how your eyes move, analyzing your balance, which you might argue is staying still, but not in my world. Breathing, just things like that. So movement coaching is the label I've given it. So I used to call myself a neuro coach, but everybody
Mm-hmm.
thought that was like mindset coaching and things. I'm all about getting you to move. Everything around your brain is linked to movement in some way. The reason we have a brain is because we move. So my goal is to find the right movement that stimulates your brain in the right way to get you going for whatever it is you want to achieve.
Yeah, thank you. So, for talking about the eye movement thing, so obviously I'm wearing glasses. I've worn glasses since I was 9 years old, and you have a video on YouTube with some exercises. You have many videos with some instructions and information, and I highly suggest everybody go there, and we'll talk about that a little later. But you have one on improving your eyesight, which sounds like, almost magical, but it's so interesting. I've done some of the exercises. So now I'm near 60 and my eyesight is getting worse and worse really rapidly just this past year. So I've been doing some of those exercises. And when I'm doing them, I can get my eye that's the worst to really focus in and see things that I couldn't see without my glasses. So really, really interesting to me. Also, then I wanted to ask you, just because you had mentioned the eyes, I wanted to bring that up. But
Yep.
also, how did you get started in all of this? How did you first get interested in doing all of this?
So eyesight was part of it actually, and
Mm,
um, I guess the big thing for me, I was a gymnastics coach. I was kind of started out as a gymnast, wasn't very good. The club sort of told me, you know what, you're not going anywhere with this, but we really need coaches. We need people to come in and train all the other ones who are going to go somewhere. So why don't you do
and
that?
that's not you. So,
Yeah, it was
how
very
funny.
strongly implied that this was my only option, really. Teaching and coaching, that suddenly was like just the best thing for me. I really love learning and absorbing information, and I was really terrible at communication skills. So it took something I was really good at and something I really needed to work on and merge them together. And I think that's why it stuck so well. And so I was always interested in like psychology and stuff like that. So all these things were kind of floating around in the background. But I was born with one side of my face massively bigger than the other side.
Mm,
Like a ton of excess fat and tissue in my cheek. As I got older, I went to hospital a lot. They tried some exploratory surgeries, said there's no way we're touching this until you're over 18 and you're able
ah,
to make a real decision on whether you really want this, um, which I think is the right call, but also then it meant your whole sort of development period dealing with the bullying and the
hmm
self-conscious, self-esteem, whatever. Um, During that time, the bone also grew out. So I had like the
mm.
bone on this side of my face a lot bigger. And so by the time I was 24 and they were ready to go and said, look, if you want the surgery, I was just like, yep, sign me up, do this.
Right.
They're like, okay, you
Sure.
need to know that there's complications, like when you're getting near the facial nerve and stuff, that can have pretty major problems. And again, my brain, after all that experience, was just like, nope, no, nothing can be worse than this.
Mm-hmm.
Just put me through. Looking back, I got pretty lucky because the complications can be pretty severe. But then I started to notice that after the surgery, I had a lot of different weird sensations. Like if I was to stroke along the left side of my cheek, it would feel like there was another hand stroking down my
Oh,
nose and another hand stroking across my eye. And over time, it even kind of creeped down to like my neck and my posture and stuff on the left side. All of this stuff started to kind of change a little bit. And that got me quite curious about like, is this actually linked? Because I go to a doctor, they say, nah, it's probably not. Like, who knows? It wasn't that bad.
and you're like,
So we don't care.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I found a friend who had injured himself and gone to see somebody who had trained with a what they called a neuro coach,
Mm,
and he had him. It was pretty severe back injury. He had him walking, and this guy was a circus artist. He had him doing the splits and stuff in about 3 weeks. So I just
wow.
went, okay, this is magic. I need to learn everything about this,
Yeah.
and looked into it, and yeah, basically never turned back. It was the exact right kind of mix of magic meets science that
Yes.
really did it
Wow.
for you.
Real, so yeah, so interesting. Yeah, and what a blessing in disguise that they didn't want you coaching gymnastics, right? Because now you've also learned so much about everything to do with to help yourself, and then people who might be going through what you were going through or something similar, they can also benefit. I haven't heard too much of like a movement coach or a neuro coach when it comes to how the brain is affected with your movement. And then even like you said, like almost like micro movements, right? Like within your eye and balance and all of that. Yeah, so
Yeah,
interesting.
it's a pretty terrible marketing idea, calling yourself a movement coach and trying to
Yeah.
market it this way, because the first question is just always, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people haven't heard about it, but part of it is because a lot of this kind of research and stuff is coming out, but the research is actually supporting things that we maybe already knew from a long time ago. So you might not have
Yeah.
heard of a movement coach, but maybe you've heard of a Feldenkrais practitioner. And
Mm.
Moshe Feldenkrais was literally the guy doing a lot of this research about like, oh, what happens when we move this way? What happens when we move this way?
Mm.
And basically developed an approach from looking at the physical body, maybe without the super like cellular neuroscientific research to support it. But
Mm-hmm.
it turns out that when you go through a lot of it, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of things explaining, meditation I would consider within my own field. And some people think meditation is just this made up thing for your brain. Now there's people who are arguing about it in this like total data and research type way. So it's really interesting in how over time, actually, these things become accepted. And that's mostly the gamble I'm taking instead of
Yeah.
latching myself onto a pre-existing practice and say, you know what, I'm just going to do Feldenkrais. I'm just going to do some other holistic practice that already exists. I've kind of gone, no, I'm my
Yeah.
history of bullying means I'm used to being an outlier, so I'll just be an outlier and I'll do it my way. And if it
Yeah.
resonates with people, it'll take off.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm glad that you are a guest here to explain what you do. So that's great. Hopefully we'll get the word out a little more. And, I want to mention too that I already mentioned a little bit about your YouTube channel, but anybody who is watching and at all interested, there's so much information and so much instruction. So definitely check out his YouTube channel. And what's the name of your YouTube channel?
I believe it's just Rewire Neurodynamics. Yeah,
Okay.
we've got about 1,500 videos on there.
Yeah.
It started out, it was supposed to be just a library of videos for when I run through sessions with people, and then I would send
Yeah.
them. And then I kind of realized that people are Googling a lot of these things, and I speak to some people like the issue for me, if I'm dealing with someone with chronic pain, if they can't work, where are they getting the money to pay for me? So I
Yeah.
want to have something free that I can provide. I'm trying to make better resources that actually explain a lot of things. But even if you just want to look at each individual video, most of the exercises on that channel are things that most of the time we should just be able to do it. They're very simple
Right.
movements. And if you struggle with them, then there's a good chance that learning to become proficient with them, no matter what your issue or problem you're dealing with is, just getting good at the ones that you're not very good at is probably going to lead to some pretty big changes in the future.
Yeah, yeah. And there's probably, I would imagine that there's changes that happen in people. Like if they come to you and say, my balance is off, or they come to you and say, I'm having, whatever it is, my posture, knee pain, whatever it is, or even something like you mentioned, like with the eyes and that. I imagine that after they work with you, there's some changes that they never expected. I mean, it's all connected, and that's why it's, holistic, is because everything's connected. And so you change one thing for the better, it's going to have effects on other parts of your life. So obviously, you work with people one on one. I don't know if you do any groups or anything, but also do you work with people only in person, or do you work virtually, or both?
I do most of my work online.
Okay.
I think actually a lot of my clients are in the US.
Yeah.
Part of that, I believe, is just the different healthcare systems we have. I'm in the UK where all the healthcare is free, so people
Ugh.
will always go to the free option first. Whereas I think over in the US, it's kind of like, all right, it's going to cost how much to do this? Or, well, let's see if there's other things. And I
Yeah.
get a lot more people who are kind of curious or just like the idea of learning how to do more things themselves and take more control over it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of work online. I do some work in person. Group sessions is something I'm thinking about. I've run a meditation course actually
Oh, nice.
recently. I'm doing one around memory. I'm kind of trying to run group classes on the things that people wouldn't normally go to. So the
Mm-hmm.
meditation one is specifically aimed at the people who tried meditation, hated it with a passion, and just went, this isn't for me. I
Right.
want to try to take it away from maybe the spiritual approach, because that's usually
Mm-hmm.
the bit that they don't like, and
Mm-hmm.
then bring in just loads of logic. And then once you kind of understand that, you're
Mm-hmm.
free to bring the spiritual back in, because that can actually be pretty great as well.
Yeah, and it's very
But if
individual and personal. Yeah.
Yeah, and if that's just the way that you prefer to learn, then yeah, by all means, learn that way. But if I can find the right way in and then teach you to have the option to go wherever you want,
Mm-hmm.
that's a win in my book.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that information on your website, or when you do have those classes, courses, or groups, is that information always on your website then?
It will be when they come up,
Yeah.
and they will also be on my mailing list. So
Okay.
if anyone's super interested, the best way to find anything out is to get on the mailing list, basically, and
Yeah.
that's where everything kind of comes out pretty quickly.
And so to get on the mailing list, they would go to your website?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a good place to go ahead and share your website. It's rewirend.com. Other socials that you have, you're on Instagram and of course YouTube we mentioned. Where is the best place for people to reach out to you?
Those are probably the main places. Instagram, obviously, is the best in terms of contacting me for information. I'm not the biggest fan of the format of Instagram, so I would say YouTube is
Yeah.
the one where you can get the most information out. I've like I said, 1,500 videos. It can be a bit of a nightmare to wade through, but you'll probably find what you need there. But you can always send me a message on Instagram, or there's a contact form on the website if you want to just get in touch directly. Also on the website, if you're interested in working, there's an option to book a consultation. So again, calling myself a movement coach, I need people to have a chat with me first, make sure that they know what they're signing up for before they go ahead and do it. So there's an option you can book in and you can actually chat to me face to face, make sure this is actually something you want to get on board with before you start parting with any cash.
Yeah. Yeah. So we will have all those links below, of course. And, whether people are watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast platforms, we'll have those links listed below. But I want to mention on your website, things that you can help with are pain and injury movement, vision and balance, as we mentioned, coordination, posture, and cognitive function and longevity. So can you talk about that a little bit? How does movement relate to cognitive function and longevity?
Yeah, that's always a curious one. And
Yeah.
part of it is just thinking about why do we have a brain in the first place? When you look at all the kind of organisms in the world, the ones that can move, like the ones that consciously do some kind of movement, have a brain and a nervous system of some kind, and the ones that stay still, like a plant,
Hmm.
doesn't have a nervous system. It has its own system that regulates it, but the nervous system, and then later the brain, and then I guess later consciousness on top of that,
Hmm.
are the system for governing movement. I guess when we think about it, all of the thoughts that you have in your day are based around movement. It doesn't make sense for me to wonder what you're thinking or what you're about to do unless I also have the ability to do something in conjunction with that.
Hmm.
So we started with movement, and the brain evolved very primitively for basic movements. Then we started having to develop more complicated, like you call it a software program or whatever you want for, okay, well, if I'm thirsty and hungry at the same time, which one do I choose? So,
You're
how am I
right.
going to solve this problem? And then as it gets more and more complicated, then we've got all these other higher order systems in the brain that's like, okay, well, when I'm going to choose this chess move, it's because I think that that person thinks that I don't know this. And so that you get these layers upon layers of things, but they're all based around some kind of movement as an action. So when it
Yeah.
comes to cognitive function, you usually find when you see how toddlers learn and develop cognitive function, they do it through movement first. So, if you've got a
Mm-hmm.
toddler and you're wondering why they don't shut up, it's because they haven't learned to internalize that monologue, so they need to do it out loud and hear it back. And then eventually they just learn to imagine what that would sound like. When they
Mm.
see a problem on the floor, they've got to physically go through it. And then once you get enough practice, then you just get the ability to imagine what it would look like if you did that. And then as we get older and older, we have this thing called cognitive function, which is just our ability to run all these scenarios through in our head without actually needing to go and do something physical. But when we
Mm-hmm.
find that these things are slowing down, let's say if we're getting older, let's say they're disrupted, so maybe we get a concussion or an illness or just bad sleep one day, then
Yeah.
we might find that we need to regress some of these things down to the more base components, and you're always going to end up with movement as the most basic kind of form or most basic component of that.
Yeah, I am a former nurse and I used to work a lot with Alzheimer's patients and some in hospice as well. So one of the things that you always hear is to help you live longer and a better life is to keep moving. And I never thought before now that that had something to do with the brain as well. So thank you
Mm.
for that. That's really interesting because I always thought, because it seems like everybody, once you get up past 60, 70 in the 80s, you're at risk for falls because your balance is off. You have either arthritis or other aches and pains. And I always thought of keep moving, that advice was about the body and not about the brain and cognitive function. So I wonder if even the doctors even realize that it's connected, but that's really great advice and that makes a lot of sense now that you say it, but I'm surprised that I didn't even realize that
Yeah,
before.
it's
So thank
interesting
you.
because it's one of the oldest
Yeah.
things that we've known is, so balance is the thing that we need to train to prevent against fall training. And then
Yeah.
we think, okay, well, how do we do that for elderly people? And the answer is actually rocking chairs. So
Oh, because
we
they just,
take
yeah.
balance as something coming from the
Slowly.
inner ear and
Yeah.
being controlled by the inner ear. Turns out it's not
Mm.
actually how strong your ankle is, it's not how strong your hips are or anything like that. It's actually how quickly can the inner ear react to movement. And one of the
Oh.
ways that we give to stimulate the vestibular systems of elderly people is oh, we've suddenly got a chair that you can sit and rock backwards and forwards in, and you can actually keep those systems working when you're maybe more at risk for, doing some sort of extreme eyes closed, standing on one leg.
Yeah, I do that. I do that to practice because
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I'll
that's one
stand
of
on one leg and see how long I can stand there, and then I'll try it with my eyes closed and see how long.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the big ones for cognitive function as well. So we control
Great.
balance through our inner ear, but also through our eyes. And a big problem as we get older is the inner ear always deteriorates. So we don't
Mm,
know, is that because of our kind of nature that we're more sedentary, or is that just what's going to happen generally
just
as
like
we get older?
aging. Yeah.
Yeah, but as the inner ear deteriorates, our eyes have to now do all the normal stuff that they do, but they
Hmm.
also have to balance us more than they were before. So, like, if I see that my computer monitor has suddenly gone sideways, I know something's up, even if my inner ear didn't tell me.
Right.
But the more that our eyes do to try and balance us, that's actually cognitively quite tiring to our brain because
Hmm.
our eyes make up about 50%, our vision makes up about 50% of all the brain cells that we have.
Mm,
So the more we kind of tax the visual system, the less time we have for, processing lots of complicated thoughts and
yeah.
things. So the approach you described of like work on your balance, if you can balance with your eyes closed, actually getting the inner ear to work harder
Yeah.
is a really great idea. And if you can't stand on one foot with your eyes closed, rocking chair, eyes closed,
Yeah.
do just as good a job.
I'm gonna get a rocking chair now. I don't even have one. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get one. So yeah, so thanks. So is there anything else that you'd like to share or make sure that people know before we go today?
I guess the main thing that I just try to tell people is that movement is the key to anything going on with your brain, which we've kind of already said.
Yeah.
And anytime you've kind of hit a plateau or an obstacle that you're struggling to overcome, the answer is usually something very small. Uh,
Mm,
it might not be something that's in reality very small, but it's the thing that seems small to you that is the thing that is usually getting in the way. So
mm,
if you write down a list of all your possible obstacles that are in your way, and then just take that page and put it over there somewhere, and now write a new page of everything that isn't in the way. The answer that you're looking for is probably on that new page. It's
mm,
something that you're like, oh, I just overlooked this little thing, Is it, yeah, my balance when my eyes are closed? Is it actually how I'm breathing? Is it how often I blink in a minute?
mm,
Stuff like that actually make a bigger impact over time than we might imagine than like the big things of this is too sore, I don't have enough money, I'm too worried about X, Y, and Z.
yeah.
Uh, Look for the small things, and usually you will find your answers there.
Great advice. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we're going to put everything in the description below. And again, I'm going to mention because not everybody reads the description below. RewireND.com is your website. So thank you so much, James, for being my guest today. And I love all the information you shared, and I can't wait to get it out there. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on. This was really nice.